It's time for the Property Podcast, where every week tens of thousands of property investors, new and experienced, join together to get news, knowledge and laughs at our expense. With me, Rob Bence.
And me, Rob Dix. Join us every Thursday morning for your weekly dose of property ideas and motivation. Then head over to our website at thepropertypodcast.com to keep the conversation going. Now though, let's get started.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to episode 118 of the Property Podcast. I'm Rob B. With me, as always, is Rob D. And Rob, it's nearly time. You're spreading the news. You're nearly going to be leaving. It's nearly time for you to leave New York.
Very good. Yeah, this is the penultimate time I'm going to be getting up to in the middle of the night to record one of these, but I'm feeling pretty sprightly anyway. I'll probably be worse when I get back. For some reason, I'm feeling pretty lively today. We're going to be talking about how to review your portfolio, which is a really fun topic as well. Always good fun to do that. And all the normal news stories and resources and all that. But I believe, Rob, you've got some news to kick us off with.
I have. So, meetups. I say meetups rather than a meetup, and I'll explain why. First of all, our big meetup that we do every quarter in London is happening in July. We'll come out with all the details very soon, but as it's summer, we won't be in the usual venue where where if you've been before, you know how hot and sweaty that gets. So we'll try and find somewhere with a little bit better air conditioning, and maybe even outside if the weather's nice. So we'll have our London meetup in July. So make sure you keep listening to hear more on that one. And also, a bit of a teaser, like we do, where I tell you really nothing, but just tell you something, and that is that we've got a bigger announcement around meetups coming up soon as well. So we've got the meetup that we do, the big one in London, very, very soon, but we've got what I believe, and I know you do, Rob, a much, much bigger announcement round about meetups, and I think it's going to go down very well. It's something a lot of people have been asking for, so that will be all revealed very, very soon too.
Yep, it's all getting bigger and better, and everyone who's been asking for a northern meetup, for example, will not be disappointed. But that is quite enough about that. Let's move on to some other people's news. And this week, the news story that we've picked out is from Money Week. And normally we can tend to pick out stories and rip on them a little bit, but I actually thought this was pretty good. This is a Money Week story by Dominic Frisby. And it's about Fergus and Judith Wilson, who are the people who you might have heard of. We've talked about it in a previous news story, who bought up something like 1,000 properties. It might be more than 1,000 around the Kent area. And they're now starting to sell them off. But I just thought it was a really decent, balanced article about why they're doing it, how they're doing it. And I promise that I'm not trying to talk anyone down, because last week we had a news story as well where I was just like, oh, well, what, why are the media talking up buy-to-let? Should we be careful? And this week's story is making the point that maybe, they got in at the bottom. Are they getting out at the top? What does it mean by the fact they're selling now? I'm not trying to scare anyone. It's just coincidence we've had things like that 2 weeks in a row. But on the whole, Rob, I just thought it was a pretty decent article.
It was. But I do have to point out that the majority of their portfolio was actually bought in the top of the market, 05 to 07. So they were buying a lot during that period. Just because they're selling now doesn't mean they're the oracle of property. I'm not convinced. I just think they've made enough money and they're pulling out, and fair enough. Well played to them. They went big and it's paid off for them. Some people go big and it doesn't, but it's definitely paid off for this couple. So congratulations to them. But are they calling the market? I doubt it. Looks like they're getting on a bit. They probably don't want the hassle of having 1,000 properties or whatever they've got to look after, so they're pulling out. But fair play to them. They've made some good money. But is it the end of the market? I think far from it. You look outside of London, it's only just started. It's hardly gone anywhere for years. So I definitely don't think it's the end of the market. I don't even think we're in the middle. But, they've made their money. Well played. And I'm sure we'll hear plenty of success stories, hopefully on the Property Hub, Rob, of other people who've done well over the next cycle.
Well, yeah, and you're completely right that they're not the oracles or anything, because they were doing things which were completely unsustainable around about the time the market turned. And like so many other people, they were saved by interest rates staying so low. So it's not like they were making really smart moves. They were just sort of seeing, like everyone else was, the value of their portfolio go up every week, having money pushed on them by the banks and taking it, which is absolutely fair enough. But it could so easily have gone another way. Now, things are a little bit different. The way that things are being done, the way things that people talk about in the Property Hub are very different and a little bit more sustainable. So if you haven't managed to pick up 1,000 properties yet, I wouldn't feel bad about it. Things have changed a little bit, and I doubt that there is absolutely masses of cash flow in that portfolio anyway. But that's a good link to mentioning something we talked about a couple of weeks ago, which is the fact that progress journals are now in the Property Hub. So you can track your journey to 1,000 properties or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. We've had quite a few start up already. Thank you to everyone who's got the ball rolling. You can pop over there to see what other people are working towards and start your own story. The link to go over and do that, as well as everything else in this episode, is at thepropertyhub.net/portfolio review. So that takes us into our topic of the week, how to review your portfolio. And we've got Andy Norman to thank for this one. I've got Andy Norman to thank for a lot of things. He's been a very loyal listener right back from the start. And he emailed us a few weeks ago saying, okay, well, once you've actually bought a property or multiple properties, that's not the end. How do you actually go back and assess how those purchases were so you can possibly do better and course correct next time? Which was a really great question and something we haven't talked about before. So we're going to put that right now.
We are. So thank you, Andy. Let's go. So the first thing you should do is get prepared. It's not any number you should look at or feature to assess. Actually, the first thing you should do is make this happen, because this is easily one of those podcasts that you can listen to, go, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. You're on your commute, you get into your office or wherever you're going, and then you completely forget about it. So the first action you should take is to get in your calendar and set a recurring reminder to do a portfolio review. It's up to you when you do this. You can do it quarterly, every 6 months, annually. For me, I probably feel better with an annual review. I tend to do a review towards the end of the calendar year. I review lots of things, not just my portfolio, all my goals, everything I've set out for the year. I do an end of year review that time. But it's up to you when you want to do it. There's no set time that you should. It really depends on what you prefer. But go into your calendar and make it happen. The other thing you should do to accompany that calendar reminder is create a little document and have a list out of everything you want to cover, because it's easy to go, oh yeah, let's do a review, and then kind of go, where do I start? Now don't worry, we're going to run through those points now, some of the things you can cover, and you might want to add some of your own too. But make sure you put a calendar reminder down so this does happen, and then attach a little document to it with the checklist of the things you want to go through, and then maybe record the results in a spreadsheet, so then you can go back to it over time and see how you've progressed. So that's step one. Make it happen. Decide on the steps you're going to take and record the results. And then once you've set that system up, everything you do from now on is going to be a lot more efficient. So make sure you do that first. And then once you've done that, you want to start actually recording some of these figures. So Rob, what should we look at first?
Okay, so these aren't in any particular order. You might not want to do all of them. You might want to add your own. Just a little bit of a grab bag of things you could look at. One of them, which I'd love to pretend that I have been doing up till now, but I've already admitted in the Property Hub that I haven't, so annoyingly, I can't take the high ground on this, which is calculating a true ROI for each property. So the idea is that when you're buying a property, you're making a number of assumptions. So you'll put in all your costs for various things, and as part of that, you'll make some kind of allowance for voids. So you might go, okay, well, let's assume it's going to be empty for 2 weeks a year or a month or whatever it is. And you're also going to be making an allowance for maintenance, which might be a percentage of the rent or some kind of fixed figure or whatever it is. But you're going to be assuming, yeah, I'm going to have to pay these costs. Hopefully other things like your agency fees and service charge and that kind of thing, you'll know more or less what they are, so you can put those in accurately. But things like voids and maintenance, you really don't know. So you're just going to be guessing. When you've owned a property for a year or more, you actually know what your voids were and what your maintenance costs were. So you can look back and see how it really played out, what your true ROI for that property was. And obviously, the longer you hold a property for, the more accurate that's going to get, because things like cyclical maintenance, every few years you're going to need to do certain things, that will all get factored in over time. So something that I haven't been doing up till now, but I'm going to start putting it into my reviews, because it does mean that if you're buying a certain type of property, for example, and you think, oh, this is a really great purchase, I want to do more like this, you might have been kidding yourself if you've made assumptions that turn out to be incorrect because there's a lot more maintenance than you thought, or the other way around. You just don't know. So first thing, calculate your true ROI.
So once you've done that, the next one's a fun one, and one that probably most people would do first in any review. And it's update your values. What's your portfolio now worth? So look back through your portfolio, look at what you've purchased them for, and look through the data now. Look at what the local market's doing. If you really want to go deep, call local agents and get them to assess the value of your portfolio. And then document those numbers. Now, be careful. You do not want to put the numbers up higher just to make yourself feel better. Well, it's worth 150, but on a good day it might get 180, so let's put 180. No. If it's worth 150, it's worth 150. Somebody isn't going to come in drunk and buy it for 180. So make sure you're truthful to yourself when you put these numbers down. I tend to actually go the other way. And when I'm looking at values of my portfolio, I tend to round down. So if I feel it's worth around 160-ish, I might put 150 just to keep it easy. I tend to round down slightly just in case for that margin of error, if you needed to sell quickly or whatever else. But it's up to you what you do. Just don't go the high end. Be realistic. Be truthful to yourself. And then once you've done that, you can have a look at where you're at and pat yourself on the back, hopefully.
And while you're looking at prices, the next thing you can do is review your rents. So this is something that you might not be able to change right away. So if you're within a fixed term of a tenancy, it's going to be pretty difficult for you to raise the rent. And you might decide if you've got a good tenant in there, you don't want to do that anyway. You want to keep them happy. But it's worth knowing what the local rental market is doing. So when the property does next become empty, you've got an opinion on what you should do. So if you use a letting agent, hopefully they'll be able to advise you. But it's always worth having your own opinion as well, just to make sure that you're setting things at the correct level. While doing so, you can also keep an eye on the overall standard of competing properties locally to see if you need to raise your game. Because it could have been the case, for example, that when you bought the property, there was very little competition locally, but more has been coming onto the market, perhaps with higher spec. So you might want to look at upgrading things a little bit next time the property becomes empty. That's something that you can do as part of your annual review, but you could also achieve that by setting up a weekly or a monthly Rightmove alert. So you can select rental properties within, say, half a mile of your property, same size, and get Rightmove to send it to you every so often. Just take a glance over it. And you might find that doing that helps you to get a feel for it more easily than just doing it in a one-off block once a year. But either way it works, worth looking at it, making a couple of little notes so you've got a plan so you're not taken by surprise next time the property becomes empty and you've got some decisions to make.
Next up, review your mortgages. So you'll probably be on all different types of mortgage products. So you might be on a fixed rate, you might be on variables, or you might come off the discount rate and you might now be on a standard variable rate, the SVR as it's often called. Have a look at each and every product you have. See if you're still locked in. See if you're at the best rate possible for the market and weigh up whether it's worth moving or not. The chances are if you started to build your portfolio up, there'll be products there that aren't as competitive as they could be. So this is the time, again, to get that calendar out, and it doesn't have to be the same time as the review. If you're doing your review annually, you might want to do this probably at least every 6 months, maybe quarterly, depending on the size of your portfolio, but certainly every 6 months, and go, right, okay, let's look at all the mortgage products now. My calendar reminders come up, quick review through my spreadsheet, bum, 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 good, wait a minute, this is now on a standard variable rate, which isn't that attractive, let's get it into something else. And that move straight away, that review could save you hundreds, if not thousands of pounds over the year. So make sure that happens. That's a big one to do. Review your mortgages. That really could have a big impact on your portfolio.
Yeah, it really could. So unlike some of the other things that we've talked about, which are more kind of just like for interest and for making more general planning, that's something that could save you money straight away. Another thing that you can do is to identify poor performers. So you're doing this review. Hopefully the news is going to be good. Hopefully you're going to be like, yeah, I'm on the right mortgage product. The value's gone up. The ROI is better than I thought. I can put up the rent next time. All good news. But that's not always going to be the case. There are going to be properties that underperform for whatever reason. Not every purchase you make is going to be an absolute belter. So if a property is underperforming, either objectively or just related to your expectations, then you can have a think at this point about what to do about it. And there are a number of different options. So for example, you could upgrade the property to attract a higher rent. If maybe it's looking at it honestly a little bit tired and you think that you could significantly bump the rental price by spending a little bit of money on it. You could also consider reconfiguring or extending the property to add an extra room to boost the rent. Or you could target a different type of tenant. So the rent that you can get for a terraced house, letting it to a family versus letting that same property to students, the difference in rent can be huge. Obviously, there are massive differences in managing that property as well, and whether it's practical and a number of other things. But by changing the type of tenant you target, you can make a significant difference to the returns. Or, finally, nuclear option, you can sell. Heresy, I know, but it is possible to sell properties. And if the time in the cycle is right and you think that your money would be better invested elsewhere, then selling is always an option. But the point is, by doing this review, you can actually identify how things are really going and make decisions like this. Chances are things will be ticking along brilliantly and you won't need to consider any of these options, but you can make better decisions once you've got a clear idea of the real picture, which is what this review gives you.
And finally, another fun one, but worth doing. It's look at your property net worth and your overall net worth. So first of all, look at your properties and go, right, okay, so I've gone through my values, I've gone through my mortgages, so what's my total value? Okay, whatever that number is, minus away my mortgages, okay, so what's my debt on this portfolio? Take my debt off, right, my property portfolio net worth is X. That's always a good one to do. Find out what that number is. But then I would carry that on and then I would look at your overall net worth, look at savings, whatever other assets you own, and add them all together and just, once a year, know where you stand when you're looking at your overall net worth. A worthwhile exercise. It's a nice one and hopefully an encouraging one as well. And if it isn't encouraging, if the number is 0 or below 0, which actually for most people, I believe it's true that a lot of people actually have a negative net worth because we are a society that lives off debt. If you are just slightly in the plus, take pride in that because most people aren't. Hopefully you're really in the plus and making great progress. And if you're not, it'll give you that push to make sure you are. So there's a list of things you can start to do. Remember, if you don't do number 1, none of it will happen at all. So make sure you make time for this review. Put a calendar reminder. Now you can create a checklist of the things you want to cover, but feel like you can add to it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And over time, you can take that procedure and add things in, take things out, do whatever you want. But doing it is the important bit. And it is really fun as well. At least for me, maybe I like spreadsheets more than the average person. I don't know. But I find it really good to actually sit down and zoom out of things and kind of take in the big picture. And like I said earlier, it's a quick exercise that will allow you to make better decisions for the whole year because you'll be focused on reality. I think we all kind of have little theories and assumptions about things, but when you sit down and look at the cold hard numbers, you'll actually be able to see exactly what's going on. Hopefully it's really encouraging, but there'll always be areas where things can be improved and you'll be able to put a plan in place to do that.
Yeah, the review process, I've talked about it before, is a really important one. If you're a goal setter, and hopefully most of you are, because I think we've mentioned it once or twice. If you're a goal setter, setting goals is fantastic, but if you don't have that time to review, then you never really understand what you've achieved. And I think that's important to look back as well as looking forward and just pat yourself on the back and look how far you've come. Because if you have set goals, then hopefully you're making more progress than the average person. So setting that time, whether it's every quarter, 6 months, a year, however often you want to do that, I always do it at the end of the year, look back at all the things I have achieved, not really focusing on the things I haven't. And by having these numbers at hand as well, I can go into the detail. And then I always make time with my wife just to look back and reflect at all the good things that have happened this year. It's a really good process and one I highly recommend. It's not our resource of the week, we have another one, but I would definitely add that to your must-dos. I've always found it very, very valuable.
So this is something that we both do. We both do it in slightly different ways, but they are some of the points that we cover. You may have your own way of doing it, and we'd love to hear those. So do go over to the Property Hub and let us know what you do as part of your review. When you do it, how you do it, and so other people can kind of look at everyone's ideas and sort of nick bits from everyone's, and it'll make everyone's process better overall. So it all starts in the show notes for this episode, which are at thepropertyhub.net/portfolio review.
Right, it's time for our resource of the week, but we don't have to talk, Rob, because somebody's done it for us. So let's listen.
Hi Rob and Rob, I thought of something perhaps other people could find useful as a resource. I rarely have time to read. When I got my Android device last year, I discovered an ebook becomes an audiobook by using the talkback feature, then enabling read aloud. This works on both Kindle and Google Play Books apps. Google Play Books turns pages for you, but on Kindle you have to flick the pages and it's a bit fiddly. There is an option to use high quality voice and it's decent. Okay, I load up now. This isn't me talking, it's my Android. Ha ha ha.
Hi Rob and Rob, sorry about that, couldn't resist. Really love and appreciate all the work that you guys do, providing free education. Can't thank you enough. Look forward to working with you at some point in the future.
Well, thank you, Manny. Well, it was Manny at the end anyway. Thank you very much, Manny. Really appreciate you leaving a recording, even though you didn't do most of it, or you're lazy so-and-so. But actually, it's a great resource. So, Rob, where can people find it if they want to go and play around with this one?
So I've dug up a couple of links for this. So if you go to the show notes, thepropertyhub.net/portfolio review, you'll find links in there to how you can set that up on your Android. I am an Android user. I don't have an iPhone, but I've looked it up and I know that iPhones have a very similar feature, and I'll link to how to set that one up as well. Both those links in the show notes. Something I've never used before. I didn't even realize that feature existed, and now I do. So thank you very much, Manny.
Thank you, Manny. And also thanks to Denzelos, who brings us this week's review. And Denzelos says, I first discovered this podcast in January and finally got round to listening to the whole series. Despite having 20 years experience in property, as a property investor, landlord, mortgage broker and IFA, I've still found the podcast to be an excellent resource of new information and inspiration for the ever-changing industry. Keep up the good work, guys, and congratulations on your 100th episode. Well, that's brilliant. I know we get a lot of newbies to property listening, but it's great that people who are experienced are picking up bits and pieces as well. And I've always said, Rob, Rich Dad Poor Dad as an example. It's all common sense stuff. There's nothing groundbreaking in there, but just having it, just reading it and reinforcing some of the core beliefs can really help you go forward. So I'm glad that, experienced investors are getting a lot from this as well.
Yeah, great to hear. Hopefully you've got a lot out of this week's episode. I hope you have, and I hope this will just be the start of a really interesting discussion in the hub. And I also hope that you're going to get a lot out of next week's episode, which is going to be the top things to look out for when viewing a property. So we've been zoomed out this week, looking at the big picture and reviewing. Next week, we're zooming right back in to look at a specific situation. You go to look at a property, what are you looking for? That's what we're talking about next week.
It is, but if you want any of the links that we've talked about this week, or to look at those points again so you can create your own document that you should review, go to thepropertyhub.net/portfolio review. That's thepropertyhub.net/portfolio review. Until next week, when it's Rob's last recording in New York, well, at least for this year anyway, Rob, I'm sure you'll be back. But until then, everyone, have a fab week. Enjoy the sunshine if it's still about, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. Make sure you join our mailing list at thepropertypodcast.com.
And remember, we love 5-star reviews. Rob even loves them more than air miles.